Bienvenidos a Joan Mon Games. Hoy os traigo AGON, la espada perdida de Toledo. Os dejaré un enlace en la descripción por si os lo queréis descargar gratis. Y empezamos.
Dear Dorothy, an old dream of mine is coming true, yet I do not feel entirely happy. I have long been preparing for Spain, and I have heard and read so many good things about Toledo. Still, although I know I am in no immediate danger, I do not feel safe on this strange journey. Perhaps I make too much of odd coincidences and the meaning of the mysterious manuscripts. Whatever it is, I have a growing sense that a strange fog surrounds this story, whose characters, including me, of course know nothing about what's going on around them. Do not worry. These doubts are not driving me insane. It's just that I feel more and more like a detective, a hound pursuing a trail, instead of a cultural historian who's commissioned by the British Museum and sets out to search for a few forgotten board games. Perhaps I shall soon find out what my real role is in this whole story. I am on the last stretch of an unpleasant coach journey in which my only fellow passengers are a rather rough priest and my unquiet thoughts. Soon we shall arrive in Toledo. Your letter reached me at the hotel in Madrid. Thank you very much for the idea. I shall look up your old drawing teacher, Mr. Salvador Diaz-Palencia. I believe he will be helpful in my search for the descendant of the cursed family, a man by the name of Candelas. Your loving husband, Samuel. Fabulous city. Toledo, the jewel box of European culture. If my Dorothy's memory was not failing her, the painter must live here, in this quarter. Would you please tell me where Salvador Diaz-Palencia, the painter, lives?
I don't know exactly. Somewhere there at the Plaza San Pedro, through the gate.
Good afternoon. You must be Professor Hunt from England. I've been expecting you. Please come in.
Miss, I am looking for a certain Mr. Salvador Diaz-Palencia.
This is his house. My name is Carmen Diaz-Palencia. Unfortunately, my father is no longer alive. I know, your kind wife sent a letter, and I consider it my duty to help my father's old friends.
I will be indebted to you. I'm very sorry. I didn't know.
Of course. How could you have known? My father died of tuberculosis approximately 1 year ago. He did not inform any of his English friends. But believe me, Professor, I am happy to see you at last. I've arranged my father's room for you. If you please, I believe you will find it comfortable. It has a separate entrance, so I will not disturb you in your contemplation. I know a man needs that often.
Oh, thank you very much, Miss Diaz-Palencia. That is very kind of you. Though I think I will only stay for a few days, and I really hope that the research will not be so complicated that I would need so many hours alone to think.
As you wish, Professor. Here is the key to the gate and your residence. Please do rest after the long journey.
Please tell me about your father. I myself have only heard about him.
Yes, your kind wife. Well, my father was born here in Toledo. He studied to be a painter, and he was an excellent trumpeter. It was his great wish to see London, the very heart of European culture. So he traveled after finishing his studies and soon settled down in England. He worked as a teacher for children of wealthy families. He generally taught the boys how to play trumpet, and the girls and ladies how to paint, and those less talented he acquainted with the history of art. Your wife must know him from these times. My father was a very handsome man. Women were crazy about him. I am convinced many families only employed him because the women in the family insisted. They preferred to endure the drawing classes solely for the purpose of being alone with the handsome teacher a little.
Well, Dorothy didn't mention such details.
My father was not an angel either. He adored female beauty, both as an artist and as a man. Thus it is no surprise that he got into some trouble. One day, a countess from the country fell madly in love with him, and my father's love was kindled too. And the unexpected fruit of that love stands here before you.
Oh, so there is English blue blood running in your veins, miss.
I am not so proud of this. After news of the pregnancy got out, there was a big scandal. The Count was terribly enraged, and of course this reached the other lords. Soon my father ceased to be the favorite of families. Instead, he was dismissed, even though so many girls cried for him. My mother gave birth, but her husband the Count would not hear of her bringing me up in the castle, despite the fact that they together could never have a child. I was torn from her, and my father received a message from the village woman saying that she would have to take care of his daughter.
These must have been terrible times.
Yes, really. My mother sometimes met my father in secret in the village. Maybe she saw me as well, but she knew it was impossible to divorce, since the poor painter could hardly support himself. And her life turned into a living hell with the Count. Not long after, she committed suicide. She jumped out of an upstairs window. My father was already rearing me on his own at that time, and one day he received a letter from Toledo. The disasters hadn't ended. His aging mother died suddenly, and the family house stood empty. The road was paved for him. He returned to his hometown with a child born out of wedlock, a strange souvenir from his long trip to England.
When did all that happen?
We were in Spain by the time I celebrated my second birthday. In 1 month, I will be 21 years old.
Perhaps it would be worthwhile talking to the young lady. Miss Carmen, how did you lose your father?
My father grew very silent and reserved in the last years. He went to paint on his own a lot, and in the latest months to take photos of the area. He was looking for the points that had once inspired his favorite painter El Greco, who was also born in Toledo. He continued to give drawing lessons, but he was compelled to give up his trumpet students because of the tuberculosis that slowly overcame him. We made a living from my embroidery. I have many clients nowadays, too.
You weren't very rich then either.
You need not be polite, Professor. We were poor as hell. My father was more and more burdened by guilt in the last years. He kept mentioning that he had failed to give me a future that would measure up to my birthright, talents, and his intentions, and he therefore had not kept the promise he made to my mother. He wanted to find me a suitable husband before his death, but that fell through too. The illness was stronger than he was.
Tell me, did your father have a will? Did he bequeath anything to you?
There was a short will in which he left everything to me, of course. Strangely, he also included that the music box he had been making for months was also to be my possession, no one else's. I came to the conclusion that poor Dad lost his mind in those final days.
There's nothing interesting in that box?
Of course not. A pretty little box which plays music when you open the lid. Sweet, but for a long time I thought he was making it for someone else. Maybe some client.
Excuse me, miss. Please don't think me nosy, but could I myself examine that music box?
That one? Of course. Quite freely. Please feel free to look around among my father's old belongings if you are bored. The key to the box is in the desk drawer. If you open the lid, the small machine plays my father's favorite tune. There was a time when I often listened to the old song, but nowadays my heart sinks when I hear it. I think anger has also mixed with the grief.
Don't be hasty, my dear Miss Diaz Palencia. Your father must have been forced by some circumstance to act as he did. But maybe I will find out more if I listen to that melody myself. Thank you. Please, tell me about yourself.
About myself? Well, it won't be easy without crying.
Come, is there such tragedy? Is it the poverty? Or you still miss your father so much?
No, I would not complain about being poor. What's more, there is an old gentleman nowadays who pays me quite well for reading to him. The newspapers in the morning and one of his books in the evening. And I have my embroidery. And I have come to think of my father with mixed feelings.
Do you feel bitter towards him for some reason?
You could say that. That is, really, I don't know what to think. Something's happened lately. But, Professor, can I trust you at all?
Miss Diaz Palencia, you considered it your duty to look after me as though I were someone you long knew and did not know. So allow me, in the place of your father, and in exchange, to protect and help you as a father would, while I enjoy your hospitality. Please continue. Maybe telling me a few things could be useful.
Thank you, Professor Hunt. So a few weeks ago, I heard someone knock on the door. It was the most influential man in the area, old Alonso Garcia de la Rica and his son Eugenio, and they were waving a document carrying my father's signature. The paper said that if my father is unable to find a husband for me, whose estate matches the worth of our house before I turn 21, then all our possessions are to be transferred to the Garcia de la Rica family, and I must marry the ugly and feeble Eugenio.
Oh, that is astounding. And did you get a good look at your father's writing and signature? It wasn't forged?
It was his original handwriting, without a doubt. Mr. Alonso mentioned some bet, resolution or promise, but I was in such shock and understood little of what he said to me. The gentlemen left rather quickly, and of course they took the document with them.
And your father never talked to you about this?
No, never. Whatever his reasons were, he should have told me. He was a coward, may he rest in peace.
Miss Diaz Palencia, you're a pretty young girl. I'm sure you have suitors, and not just one, but many. Can't one of them save you from this forced marriage?
Look, Professor, maybe I would have suitors, but I am willing to marry only one man. The blacksmith's assistant who lives nearby has been a good friend of mine since I was a child. We have loved each other since we were born. My father wasn't against our marriage because he was friends with his father, and his mother was my nanny in my early childhood.
That is what I am talking about. Couldn't you marry this young man?
No, I cannot. On the one hand, he's dirt poor, let alone having an estate equal to the house. And on the other hand, all our hope has gone up in smoke as he has been jailed. He has been charged with the theft of valuables.
Well, then he may not be the best choice.
No, Professor. I am convinced that Francisco is innocent. It's just that we are so unlucky, both of us.
Oh, you shouldn't cry. Maybe the situation is not so bad.
There is no hope left. Please, Professor, you seem to be such a kind person. Help me. I don't know how and by what means you could help, but I would be grateful if you could save me from this hopeless situation. Otherwise it is not worth living anymore.
Come, don't say such things, my dear. You must not give up. I'll see what I can do. Well, this is more or less how I imagined it. Mr. Diaz Palencia could not deny his attraction to England. I must admit I would have been glad to meet him. Well, I would have been surprised to find it missing from the shelf. Aha, let's see. See what an important role music can have in someone's life who can even play an instrument. Locked. Perhaps some lumber room is inside. No, this is not the right key. Mr. Diaz Palencia's diary, which he used in teaching the trumpet. What beautiful workmanship! A Chinese cigar box with a tricky lock.
Bueno, pues hasta aquí. Gracias por ver el vídeo.